Gender diversity on boards is certainly good for business, but how do you measure that? Pat Flynn certainly has an opinion or two on the subject. She is a trustee professor of economics and management at Bentley University, and welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So why is gender diversity so important?
Okay, gender diversity on boards. I'll stick to boards, at least for now. It's important because, just to give you some information at the beginning, there's less than 20% of the directors are women in the United States on corporate boards. In Massachusetts, it's only 16%. But if you think about the role of women in the economy, they're over half the population. They, not surprisingly, spend about 85% of all consumer dollars are spent by women. And most recent data show that women over 50 have 3/4 of the financial dollars in this country. So you've got all these, whether it's women, whether they're spending money, or whether they have financial wherewithal, and yet boards have less than 1 in 5 are women.
But couldn't the same be said for people of different race, color, or creed?
Yes, that can be true. However, it's much harder to get that data. So I'm responsible with some of my colleagues to do a report every year on the 100 largest companies in Massachusetts.
Right.
And we go through their public documentation, and we can find out if they're male or female. They do not indicate whether they are a minority or their backgrounds. So it's harder to get the data.
So it might read well in a company's annual report, but does it affect their stock price?
In terms of diversity, absolutely. Let's put it this way. Some studies have shown pretty conclusively that if you have a diverse board, in particular women on the board, then your stock price is going to do better. For instance, Credit Suisse did a study of it was over 2,000 companies in the world. And they show that if you have even one woman on your board, then stock price performance was about 26% better than the companies that had no women.
What about companies that have no women on the management team?
No women on the management team. That's almost as bad as having no women on the board. One of the things we track in Massachusetts is women on boards and women in the executive suite. And of the 100 largest companies today, 22 of those companies have no women on their boards. 22. I mean, this is 2016. It's hard to believe. But another 44 have no women in their executive suites. So we actually affectionately call the companies that have no women in either place 0 zeros. They do not like to be called 0 zeros, but we're working on it. When we started doing this report in 2003, 50 of the 100 companies had no women on their boards. And so now it's down to 22, but it should be 0.
Is there an ideal number of women on a board?
Well, board numbers vary, so I would say 50% for men and women would be ideal. We're not saying women should take over the boards, but there has been research that shows the magic number is 3. If you have 3 women on the board, Catalyst has shown on research that their performance out measures by far boards that have fewer. There's also some additional studies that have been done that 3 women in the room, in the board of directors room, makes a big difference.
What are your recommendations for companies to get the best people in the seats regardless of gender?
Well, if they can't find anybody, and this is an excuse we get all the time, we say, why do you not have any women on your board? Look at your customers, look at the people who invest in you. And frequently they will say, we can't find anyone. So the next question is obviously, where have you looked? And unfortunately, in the companies that have no women on their boards, frequently they ask other board members. They ask the people in the room. They ask people on their nominating committee. So they really need help because the women are out there. Used to be that they only took CEOs or former CEOs to serve on boards. That's just not the case anymore. They're looking for people with finance skills. They're looking for people with marketing skills. They're looking for people with cyber experience, risk analysis experience. And there are a lot of women that qualify in those areas. So they should definitely get help.
Do gender diversity best practices differ from country to country?
Absolutely. The key is the difference between what's happening in Europe versus what's happening in the United States. So, for instance, there are board gender quotas. Norway was the first. Norway started back in 2003. But since then, France, Spain, the Netherlands, many other countries have mandated a certain percentage. The percentage varies, but it's often between 30 and 40%.
Do you think the U.S. should follow suit?
We're not going to have mandatory quotas. I don't believe that's going to happen, but the role model of the UK and working on a voluntary basis with large corporations and getting the message across and having the men help the women, I mean, especially in companies that there aren't women, either executives or board members, it's kind of hard to get access. So we really need those men, and I think the UK model is excellent for the US.
Pat, thank you.
You're welcome.
Pat Flynn, Trustee Professor of Economics and Management at Bentley University.